You're listening to the Life with Old Dogs podcast, and I'm your host, Dawn Mimnaugh, primary caretaker of all of our wonderful senior German Shepherds right here at Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary. Hey folks, and welcome back to the Life with Old Dogs podcast. So this is season 7, and in this season, we're going to be taking a deep dive into commercial brand dog food, better alternatives, and home-cooked food for aging dogs. Okay, so as our dogs age, their nutritional needs change. And just like human beings, older dogs require a balanced diet that supports their aging body. All right, so right off the bat, the first thing that comes to my mind is commercial brand dog food for all life stages. I mean, let's think about that. Really, common sense. Do you eat baby food throughout your life? No, you don't, right? Your dietary needs change as you age. So you don't eat the same things from the time you're a newborn until the time you come to pass. So why do our dogs, or why does the commercial brand industry think that's appropriate? So all life stage dog food to me is, bam, a huge no-no. So proper nutrition for an aging dog can, right off the bat, help your dog maintain an ideal weight, right? Because the calories are adjusted for a less active older dog as opposed to a very active, spry puppy. And being able to maintain a healthy weight is essential. Not only do you want to keep your dog at a decent weight for mobility issues alone, but it helps keep things, diseases at bay like arthritis and diabetes. That's just 2 off the top of my head. So, if you have a dog who's an ideal weight, chances are they're going to have a higher energy level than a senior dog who's morbidly obese or even somewhat overweight and then struggling with arthritis in addition to that. Maintaining a healthy weight also helps with cognitive ability. Obviously, if they're up and they're moving around, they're more engaged with what's going on around them. And, have a higher level of cognitive ability as opposed to a dog who's living a sedentary lifestyle and just, overweight and laying around the house a whole lot. And okay, we actually use commercial brand dog food to a certain degree. And I'm not saying it's, totally bad if you do, and I'm not trying to shame anybody or anything like that, because again, we use from brand dog food and canine caviar for a couple of the residents here. So I'm not saying it's 100% bad. Just saying that, I'll get into that. So we do use commercial brand dog food. Yes, it's convenient. Yes, it's nutritionally balanced. But are there better options? Yes, there are. Okay. And in my mind, I look at feeding the Woody's Place residents like I feed myself. So, with the Woody's Place residents, I think a lot of you have heard me talk about this before, as in regard to commercial and home cooked or dehydrated or whatever. I do like an 80-20 split or a 70-30 split, depending on the week, where, 80% of the time they're getting home cooked and dehydrated, and 20% of the time maybe they're getting kibble and canned or something like that, depending on the week. It is convenient. There's no doubt about it, but it's not my preferred go-to, and I'm going to get into why here in just a minute. But I don't want anyone feeling badly about giving their dogs kibble. Again, we do. And I understand why people do it. Like I said, we're going to get into that here in just a minute. Okay, before I get into like the history of commercial brand dog food and the process of how commercial brand dog food kibble is made, I want to talk about like a few reasons why you may not want to use kibble aside from that. Look at all the pet food recalls that have taken place recently. And when I say recently, I mean in the last 10 years. There's a lot. I remember like when they first started, it was just a big shock. Like, oh my God, this food got recalled and some of these dogs got sick and died from it. And this is just awful. And, how could they do this? The companies do this. We trust them with our beloved fur friends. And, it's like they just didn't even care. And they're in it to make money and stuff like that. And then as time went on, it's almost like we got desensitized to it. It's like, oh yeah, another dog food recall, more sick dogs, and I just don't think that's something we should grow accustomed to. If it was happening to our children, wouldn't we demand better? I know I would, right? So that is one reason why we're starting to see a movement toward away from kibble and canned food, commercial brand dog food, and a move toward like a dehydrated raw or even home cooked food, and people like me wanting to take more control of what's going into their dog's food, how much they're getting, and things of that nature, which I applaud. I'm always excited when someone asks me questions about home cooked dog food. I am a race certified pet nutrition coach. So I did take a pretty lengthy course just to make sure that I knew what I was talking about. I am not a pet nutritionist by any means. Okay, I didn't do any residency or anything like that. I'm a coach. That's it. So there is a difference, and I certainly want to make sure that you are aware of the difference. But I do have some knowledge, and I am certified. And the course that I took is the same course that your veterinarian would take, right? So that's pretty good. Okay, but anyway, getting back to the recalls and stuff like that, sometimes it's due to too much of one ingredient, like a vitamin that could be harmful to our dogs. Other times it's because of mycotoxins in a certain level that was found that's not appropriate. None of it should be appropriate, not like zero, but maybe there's a level that's too high that's not appropriate for our dogs. Maybe it's salmonella or E. coli or something, and you spend your money and you buy this food and you think at least you're giving your dog good food, and it turns out that that's not the case at all. So again, big movement toward getting away from commercial brand dog foods. There's lots of reasons why, and I think they're legit. All right. Oh, excuse me. All right. I'm going to start with the history, the evolution of commercial brand dog food, because in order to know where we're going, I want you to know where commercial dog food has been and is right now. Okay. Because I don't think a lot of people know this. I think a lot of folks, they have their dogs, right? They have their older dogs, and we're conditioned. We're conditioned to believe that we pick up that bag at the store while we're grocery shopping, or if we're a little more knowledgeable, we at least go to the pet food store and not get the grocery store dog food, or go to a specialty boutique that has even higher end commercial brand dog food. So we're conditioned to believe we're supposed to be buying this bag in the store with this, nice little hunk of chicken on it, and this, dog looking all happy because it's going to get chicken, right? This beautiful chicken breast or chicken breasts or whatever. And that's not what's happening. But anyway, let's start at the beginning with the history or evolution of commercial brand dog food. All right, so let's start in the mid 1800s. During that time, dogs lived outside. They lived outside and they survived on raw food, meat scraps, leftover human grade food, and things of that nature. They were predominantly working dogs, whether it be on a farm or something like that. But one thing they were not was domesticated inside, foo-foo dogs. That was not the case in the mid 1800s. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that there was a substantial increase of wealth in certain households, that the perception of dogs changed. And as opposed to them being outside all the time, then they were invited to come into the home, and that's when domestication of dogs began. So the very first commercial brand dog food came into existence around that time. I think it was like around the 1860s. And it was by an electrician. I believe he was an electrician named James Spratt. And James Spratt, he was over in Europe, not here in the United States. He witnessed sailors who would get off ships after their long excursions or whatever out in sea, and they would have like this biscuit type food that really was just flour, water, and salt. And they would give the scraps and stuff to dogs, I guess, in the shipyard and whatnot. And the dogs really seemed to love it. So these biscuits, again, flour, water, and salt, basically, they had a great shelf life, right? And I guess they provided some sort of nutrition to the sailors. So it was a fantastic item for them to take out to sea with them, because they'd be out there for long periods of time. So Mr. Spratt saw the dogs eating this, and somehow this electrician decided that dog owners need something like that for their dogs that are now domesticated inside the house. They need something that it has a good shelf life to it, some nutritional value and a good shelf life to it. So he hung up his tool belt and his meter and decided he wasn't going to bend conduit anymore. And he was going to make dog food. And he did. His brand of dog food was the world's first large brand commercial dog food. And he must have been a really good salesman, because he convinced people that this was a good dog food for their dogs, and the dogs that are now in the house, and the only food their dog would ever need, right? I mean, that's insane. He was an electrician, and somehow just went down this rabbit hole of like, oh yeah, hey, whatever they're feeding those dogs, we need to do something like that. And then I need to convince everybody that that's the only food their dog needs. So problem was, it costs a lot of money to make his dog food. And they were biscuits, I believe that's what they were in the beginning. So he could only really sell them to the upper crust, because pretty much what he was asking was, that's how much it costs, like how much somebody made in a day. And he was asking, like 1 day's wage to pay for this dog food. So a lot of people couldn't really afford his food in the beginning, just because it was so costly to make. But people still bought it, and they still bought into his story, his belief that it was a great food and the only food the dog needed. So, and what I find even crazier is he would not disclose all of the ingredients in his food. For instance, like the meat in the food, if it was meat. But he was so good at marketing and advertising. Again, people bought into it. They bought into it. Sound familiar? I mean, isn't this what Mars and Purina and all those companies do? They're great marketers. So he decided that he was going to cross the pond and bring his dog biscuits to the United States. And I think this was like in the late 1800s. And again, getting back to the marketing, which Mr. Spratt was fantastic at, he got right in with dog show folks here in the United States. And, I don't do dog shows. I never have, but I certainly do know people who have. And they can be, very passionate. they are very passionate about what they're doing, and they want what's best for their show dog. So he went right to them. And a lot of the time they have money too. So he went right to them. And that was his target audience, which he knew. I mean, I don't know if you're into marketing or advertising or anything of that nature, but you have to know your target audience. And this guy did, for sure. In addition to that, he purchased a full page cover of the first American Kennel Club journal. And I believe this was in, I want to say 1889, 1890, somewhere around there. So he bought the cover. So of course, right? I mean, it's on the cover of this prestigious magazine, and it's got to be good, right? We don't need to do any due diligence. It's on this cover. That means it's if it's good for show dogs, it's good for my Fluffy at home in my house. So he was a smart guy. So his dog food, his commercial brand dog food, his dog biscuits, it started selling like hotcakes. It was a one-stop shop, and it was convenient, and people loved it. So once we started rolling into the 1900s, people wanted quick, easy, convenient for their dog food. And other companies started to take notice to what Mr. Spratt was doing, and they jumped on the commercial brand dog food endeavor as well. Now, by the 1920s, canned dog food came onto the scene and started to steal the show. People loved it. People were just freaking over commercial brand dog food in a can, right? So it's not dry. Now it's moist and it's meaty, and they have special wording on it like lean red meat in big letters, right? That I think it was kennel ration at that time. I remember kennel ration as a kid. I don't even know if they're around anymore, but again, marketing, big marketing campaigns, and people were freaking over this, but in teeny tiny print that you would need like a magnifying glass to see, it was horse meat. It was horse meat, and they were breeding horses and slaughtering like 50,000 or more a year just for the dog food industry, which the consumers didn't know. So again, just another punch in the gut. Like, yeah, we're gonna put this out there that this is great and this is grand and all this other stuff, but we're going to be sneaky and sly behind your back and not really let you know what's in there. So, oh my gosh, just sleazy. But anyway, so people did not like that their dogs were eating horse meat unbeknownst to them, and who could blame them? But then World War II happened, and producers of canned food needed to come up with another way to mass produce commercial dog food, because tin was a hot commodity, and they couldn't be using the tin for the dog food cans because the military needed the tin, and they also needed meat. So it was, dogs were at the domestic dogs were kind of like at the bottom of you're important to us, if you will. Like it was, and I understand, obviously there's a war going on, right? And any resources available should go there, I guess. So anyway, by 1956, I believe, the first commercial brand dog food was produced by using a process called extrusion. I don't know about y'all, but that just sounds gross. I mean, seriously, without even knowing the process, it's just not a pretty word. It's not like fillet or anything like that, filleted, or it's extrusion. That just doesn't sound very nice. So the process of extrusion goes something like this. The ingredients that's going to go into the kibble, whatever that might be, because, so far up to this point, it's a mystery or just an out and out lie. They're combined into like a dough type consistency, and then they're cooked with intense pressure at an intense heat. So basically all the moisture is just cooked right out. It's like charbroiling food basically on the grill. That's, just like till you have like this lump of charred whatever left. And, it's not like if it's like a cheeseburger, if you're cooking like a burger or something like that, you just, all the flames are coming off your grill and everything. It's way too high. It's way too hot. And it cooks real fast, and you end up like with this like puck looking thing on your Blackstone grill, or whatever. It's just gross. It's similar, and everyone knows that eating something charbroil on a regular basis is a carcinogen. Well, so's kibble. If you're cooking kibble like that, it's the same principle basically. So anyway, first step, cook the bejesus out of the ingredients to the point that they become just crumbly and fall apart. There's different ways, I guess, slightly different variations that extrusion can take place. I know other times that, they shove that dough-like consistency through like this tube, if you will, to make the teeny weeny little pieces, and then cook it at a high rate. The one thing that does remain consistent is the cooking at the high rate and in intense pressure, right? That's consistent. So what's happening, aside from what I've already mentioned, is when they cook it like that, they are literally, all the moisture is gone. So there's no moisture, but they are literally cooking out all the minerals and all the nutrients in the ingredients, whatever they may be. And then, then they go back later on and they add those minerals and nutrients back in, but in a synthetic form. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I have to laugh because I think of my husband often because he likes watching Judge Judy. And she always says, if it doesn't sound right, it's usually not.
Hey there, folks. This week's episode is being sponsored by The Shepherd Shop. The Shepherd Shop sells German Shepherd and dog-related merchandise, as well as our one-of-a-kind Woody's Place merchandise, with proceeds supporting Woody's Place Senior German Shepherd Sanctuary. So to check out the Shepherd Shop and support the sanctuary, head on over to www.wpsgss.org/Shepherd Shop. That's SHEPHERDSHOPPE. And now, back to our episode.
All right. So people loved kibble, right? First they loved canned. First they loved the biscuits. Then they loved canned. Now they love kibble. Kibble has a great shelf life, right? It could be on the shelf for like 12 months to half a year, as long as it's not opened. I mean, that's what they say anyway. I kind of disagree about that. Like, I don't know. Once you open that bag, there's fats. There's fats in this food. And once you open those bags, the fat on the food is then exposed to oxygen, and it can become rancid if it's not used within a certain amount of time. The other thing is the mycotoxins in the food. I'll talk about that later. Sometimes I get I start going down a little bit of a rabbit trail with dog food. Anyway, by the 1970s, people were just in love with kibble. And there was interesting things happening in our culture at that time. So, in the early 1970s, now you have about 50% of women not home being domestic engineers, which I find nothing wrong with. I mean, I like being a domestic engineer. I do other things too. I'm an entrepreneur as well, but I love being in my kitchen making stuff and doing laundry and cleaning and stuff like that. But anyway, women were looking for more. There were things happening in our culture at the time. Divorce rates were rising. So anyway, more women were moving toward the workforce. More women were becoming the head of the household at that time. And, now we have dogs who are completely domesticated at this time. But, who's going to cook for the dog? Nobody. And as the 70s rolled on into the 80s, I'm a total Gen Xer. I mean, who was cooking? We were. That's who. I'm not saying my mom didn't cook. My mom did cook, but my mom worked too. So a lot of the times I was starting meals. I was cooking a lot of meals. I was cleaning up after dinners and stuff like that. So, people in situations like that, women in situations like that, men in situations like that, it was very, very convenient to just, again, grab that bag of kibble at the dog food, the grocery store. It was inexpensive. So the prices had come down from when Mr. Spratt started his biscuits. Now it's like super affordable. It's cheap. It's actually cheap. And, people who don't know any better are like, heck yeah, I'm going to go buy that bag of, whatever at the grocery store and Fluffy's going to eat it once or twice a day and we'll just call it good because, hey, look, there's a chicken breast and a beautiful salmon on the front of the bag, the brightly colored bag. And there's a picture of a wolf on there. So obviously that's what they ate back then. And some of them even have blueberries in it, which is great for them. And, so they see this imagery, this marketing, this brilliant marketing, and they're thinking that's exactly what's in this bag, but it's not. And even if it was, they cooked the shit out of it. So all the nutrients are gone. So once the commercial brand manufacturers knew they had dog owners like hook, line, and sinker, we got them, just like Mr. Spratt, you're not going to need any other dog food other than this. This is all your dog needs from the beginning of his life to the middle of the life to the end of the life. This is it. Then they started focusing in on like niche foods, like for overweight dogs, like reduced calorie. If your dog has allergies, you want this type of dog food. If your dog's a senior, here's, a senior dog food. Here's a puppy dog food. If your dog has kidney disease, here's a special diet for this. Maybe you might only be able to get it at your vet, but here you go. Here it is. But it was still kibble or canned. And it was still being cooked the same way. And the irony is that kibble in and of itself contributes to these ailments. Now, fortunately, fast forward to today, March 2023, all right? We're having a big snowstorm outside, and I'm glad the lights are still on because it's pretty windy. I was worried I was going to lose power, but fast forward to today. And fortunately, thanks to the internet mostly, more dog owners are becoming aware of the fact that with the convenience of kibble and maybe the cheap price, now I realize not all are cheap, there comes a price, and it's usually your dog's health. Because again, the very process of the extrusion pulls out all the moisture, all the minerals, and all the nutrients of the ingredients. Okay, so while that 40-pound bag of kibble may cost you $45 and may last you a year to a year and a half, as long as it's unopened, that is. And the convenience of scooping out a cup or two throwing it in Fido's bowl once or twice a day and calling it good, there is that bigger price to pay. And again, it's going to be your dog's health. I mean, we love our dogs, right? I believe most people love their dogs. Now, I know there's just jerks out there who don't. I mean, we end up with dogs here at Woody's place because people either can't or don't want to care for their aging German Shepherd. I mean, it happens all the time. But I do believe most people love their dog and treat their dog like family and genuinely want what's best for their dog. But, and again, I'm not saying all kibble is bad, and I'm not saying there isn't a time and place for it, but look at it this way. Kibble is equal to cereal, right? And think of a good cereal that you might eat. I mean, it could be organic, it could be all natural. It could have wonderful top shelf ingredients in it. And, you know, and it might cost you a fortune in Trader Joe's or something like that. But you wouldn't eat that cereal every day, every meal, from the beginning of your life to the end of your life, because there's no way that one cereal is going to meet all of your nutritional needs. It is impossible. Impossible. It's the exact same thing with kibble or any one food for our dogs, aging German Shepherds or not. It's just impossible. Okay, because it's devoid of what they biologically need. And nutrition is the cornerstone of health, not only for us, but for our aging German Shepherds as well. So, why aren't more people looking into better alternatives, or feeding raw, or home cooking for their dogs? Well, I can think of 4 reasons right off the top of my head. Number one, a lot of people are afraid because they don't know. They don't know how to do it. And they obviously they do love their dogs and they don't want to harm their dogs. So a lot of people do not know how to provide like a home cooked meal for their dog or feed raw. We don't do raw here. I do some things raw, but on a whole, we don't do raw. And I'm not opposed to raw at all. Not at all. I like to cook. Basically, that's it's just a personal preference for me. I like to cook. That's why I cook for the dogs, but I'm totally not opposed to raw, not one bit. But, people don't know really even what they should cook for their dog. The other thing is lack of time, and we're all busy. Everybody's going into like a bunch of different directions. That's another thing we've kind of been conditioned to believe, that we're just constantly supposed to be doing, and that for some reason it's frowned upon if we sit and just, take a moment to maybe take, a cooking class for your dog or for yourself, right? It just seems so wrong. Or the flip side to that might be that we're sitting so much all day at work that the last thing we want to do when we come home is to sit to watch a cooking class online or something like that. So time is a big factor. The other is financial cost. And I'm not saying that it's cheaper or more expensive to home cook for your dog. I think that depends. If you are feeding your dog something like a Olroy or Beneful or Pedigree or something along those lines, then yeah, you're going to think home cooking for your dog is expensive for sure. But it doesn't have to be. It really doesn't. And we're going to get into that like this whole season. All right. And I'll just let you in on something right here and now. A lot of the times when I am cooking for the residents here at Woody's place, it is something along the lines. The ingredients are the basic ingredients to whatever it is that Mr. Woody's place and I are having for dinner that night. And I just alter it for the dogs. So, let's say, let's say I'm buying ground meat when I go to the store. Instead of buying like a pound of ground meat for me and Mr. Woody's place, I'll buy like 10 pounds of ground meat. And we have a big freezer downstairs, so I divvy it up into smaller packages. And when, Mr. Woody's place and I are having something with ground beef for dinner, I take a pound out for us and I take some out for the dogs. And that's how I do my meals. So it's like we have ground beef and broccoli or something on the side. Well, the residents here are also having ground beef and broccoli. But we'll talk about that more in later on down the road. All right. The fourth reason I can think of why more people aren't looking into cooking for their dogs is we've been brainwashed. And I was too for a time. I really was. I mean, when I was younger, our dogs would have pedigree and I didn't think anything about it. And I remember one time someone saying to me, a friend of mine said, "You're giving your dog pedigree? Like, I'm surprised you would do that." And I was just like, what's wrong with pedigree? I just didn't know what was wrong with it. But I was very green when it came to nutrition for the dogs and stuff like that. And I feel badly that those dogs all those years ago, I just didn't know. And if you're feeding your dog pedigree and that's the best you can do for your dog, or you don't see anything wrong with it, I mean, to each his own, but I'm telling you, there are better options than that out there. So we've been really, really brainwashed by the pet food industry, the commercial brand pet food industry, the big ones, the big monsters out there that, like I said, they're very, very good at marketing, like Mr. Sprat was, and the manufacturers of canned dog food and I think it was Kennel Ration, to be honest with you, but they really, really get us with the imagery, right? They really get us with that. It's usually just all like, butterflies and rainbows, and we just think it's wonderful. So wonderful that we don't turn the package around and actually read the ingredients, which I am going to talk about in one of the episodes down the road, probably the next one. I think it's the next one, but because there's a lot of stuff on there that, what does it even mean? What does chicken meal mean, right? And what is so special about salt in the ingredients? What is so special about that, the placement of salt in ingredients and what comes before it and what comes after that? But we're going to talk about that. I'm going to let you know what that industry secret is about salt and where it is placed on your dog food label. So that's it. They have us convinced and they know exactly what, Mr. Brutus laying over there on the sofa needs, at 12 and a half years old with his, skin that's always been a mess. They know. Oh, okay. So obviously if you're going to do like some sort of raw or home cooking or something of that nature, and again, I am talking about better alternatives, dehydrated food, depending on where it's coming from. That's another good option as well. But let's talk about like home cooked. All right, I'm going to stick with that because that's what I do. It needs to be balanced. Okay, you don't want to cause more harm than good. But a fallacy that I think scares most people away from doing home cooked is they think they have to have every stinking meal for their dog nutritionally balanced every stinking time. No. No. Do you do that for yourself? No. But, they have to have their nutritional needs met within a certain amount of time. Okay. And there are ways to nutritionally balance a meal that are kind of like cheats, but they work. But then again, it's like synthetic, adding synthetic vitamins. I mean, there certainly are meal supplements for dogs, designed specifically for dogs that you can purchase and put in the food. A lot of the time they'll come in like a powder form or something like that. Sometimes they're a chew or whatever. And it's like a multivitamin for us. And that's a great way to balance their diet. If you're cooking at home and you're just not sure if you have it, 100% right. Another little tip that you can do is, let's just say you decide you're going to be home cooking for your dog. And I'm not talking about a meal topper, because I'll do that sometimes too, where it's a high quality kibble. Yes, I know it's still the same process of extrusion, but like a high quality kibble and then home cooked on top. Because the reason for that is, yes, I get busy too. And yes, again, they do get kibble to a certain degree. They're still getting that home cooked on top, which is better than nothing at all. Okay. So that's how I look at it. I'm not perfect. I'm a realist. All right. There's a lot of, and I'm going down another little rabbit trail here, but there's a lot of stuff out there on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And oh my God, I just get exhausted watching that this, individual, and good for them. Don't get me wrong. But everything is just picture perfect on in their dog's bowl, and like everything's delicately put in there and perfectly balanced, and look at this, and there's like 100,000 likes or whatever. And I think to myself, like, this isn't reality. This, most people are working. Most people have a family. Most people are, doing other things. Do they want, a nutritionally balanced, good meal for the dog? Yes, absolutely. Are they going to go over it with a fine-tooth flea comb? No, most people aren't. So I'm a realist, folks. Okay. I'm a realist. Kibble, sometimes not a problem. All right. With a meal topper, like home cooked on top. So what should be included in a home-cooked, nutritionally balanced meal for your older dog or any dog? A good source of protein from lean meats and fish. That's number one. Carbohydrates. Now, I'm talking about like from vegetables, not, pasta and stuff like that. Okay. I like bread too, but we want whole grains and vegetables. Healthy fats with omega-3s is essential. Water, minerals, and vitamins. Okay, that's it. That's it. Now, I'll go into it a little deeper about what percentage of each you need in a meal. And I'll also talk about foods you absolutely should not be using. Garlic is a myth. Like you can use fresh garlic in food, but only a small amount. Like you don't want to be giving them like a clove or anything like that. But these dogs here have had garlic. They just had garlic last night. Fresh garlic. It's fresh garlic, okay, and it's only a little bit. So they're not going to lose it if they have garlic. It's actually a small amount is actually good for them. But yeah, we'll get into that. We'll get into foods that they absolutely should have and foods that they absolutely shouldn't have, and how much of each. And I'm really excited to talk about this. I really am, because I'm in my kitchen a lot, cooking for myself and Mr. Woody's place, and the Woody's place residents as well. It's something I never really thought. I remember when, like, I was a kid, I told you I'm like a total Gen Xer, so I had a lot of like household responsibilities because my mom wasn't home until like my youngest sister was born. Then she was home. But I had a lot to do. Like by the time I was 6, I was like peeling like big bags of potatoes and stuff like that, And I remember thinking like, I just didn't love it, but I'm so glad that I was put in that position because I love to cook. And what I learned a lot on my own, but the basics I learned from my mom, because my mom cooked. Like we didn't do like prepackaged foods and really didn't have the money to order out or anything like that. So my mom cooked, and she made like large meals because there were a lot of us. So I still make a lot of food, too much food. Like Mr. Woody's place will come out of the kitchen and be like, who is all this food from? I'm like, us. All right. So one thing I'd like to add, and then we're going where to get going here. I feel really bad for dogs who get scolded for begging. Like if they're at the table, everybody's eating, they're sitting on the floor, they're looking up, they really want something from the table. The reason these dogs are begging is because they know what their body needs. They need adequate food, real whole food that they're not getting. And they see that we have it, and not only do they want it, they need it. So I feel awful for dogs who, when someone shushes away and says, stop begging. I mean, the bottom line is they need whole foods, and we need to be giving them whole foods. Even if we stick with kibble, and I would strongly suggest if you're feeding like a low quality grocery store kibble to educate yourself more on that and look into higher end kibbles. Put human grade food on top of it. One of the easiest things you can do, as long as your dog is not allergic, is boil eggs or scramble them. How hard is that? Scramble one egg. A large dog can have one egg a day, shell and all. Raw even. I mean, I can't tell. We have chickens here and here at the sanctuary. I can't tell you how many times like I've, I got eggs in my pocket right now I have to take out. I forgot about them. But I've gone to take eggs out of my coat pocket and one falls on the floor and one of the dogs just runs over, beelines over and eats it, egg and all. And it's perfectly fine for them. It's healthy for them, as a matter of fact. Put an egg, scramble up an egg, let it cool down a little bit, and just put it on top of their kibble. Just remember that if you're going to do that, how simple is that, right? If you're going to do that, take a little bit of the kibble out of the bowl. Okay, maybe take like 1/8 of a cup of the kibble out of the bowl, or 1/16 of a cup or something like that, because you have to account for the nutrients and calories in the egg. All right, so if you're going to do like a cup of kibble and put a hard-boiled egg or, scrambled egg on top, maybe take like 1/8 of a cup out, okay? Because you don't want your dog getting overweight. All right, you have to adjust the calories there and the nutrients for that. So maybe just start there and see how your dog does. Now, if your dog's never had eggs or something like that, and you start giving your dog like an egg a day or an egg every other day with their food, and maybe you notice they're starting to itch a little more, or maybe their ears are getting stinky or something like that, then maybe, and you never had that before, then back off the egg, because their food allergies are real, just like with people. But I would start there, something simple. Maybe if you don't want to do that and you have some blueberries, throw like 4 or 5 blueberries in their bowl, smash them up and put them in there and see how they do with that. All right. But that's a start. And we're going to talk more. Definitely. I think it's like the 3rd episode. We're going to start talking about specifics for home cooked diet recipes for older German Shepherds. So the recipes that I'm going to be giving out here later on in the season, I want you to know they are going to be specifically designed for older, large dogs. Okay. I have to draw the line somewhere. I mean, Woody's Place is a senior German Shepherd sanctuary, so I'm not going to be giving out recipes and stuff for puppies and whatnot. This is specifically for older, larger dogs. And when I say larger dogs, I do mean like 65 pounds and above. Okay. All right, folks, that is it. Now you know all about the evolution of commercial brand dog food. I remember when I read about it, I thought to myself, wow, that was like back in the 1800s and not much has changed. Like it's still the same way. Like people are still buying stuff that they don't know what they're buying, or they do know what they're buying and they're getting swindled, and it's just seedy. But anyway, I hope that opened your eyes a little bit to to the commercial brand dog food industry. And I'm talking about really the conglomerates. There's a lot of mom pops out there. And I'm fond of quite a few actually. So I'm really talking about the big guys, and I'll mention more about them next week. I think there's even an infographic coming out about who they are and how much they're making every year. And I don't think it'll surprise too many people, but all right, folks, thank you so much for being here. I'm super, super excited about this whole season. And it is something I'm passionate about, and I can't wait. I'm always being asked about recipes for dogs, but I cannot wait to share some with you. All right. Until next time,